Good evening, Minot. Thank you all for tuning in tonight. My name is Tom Rafferty, and I will be your moderator for the evening for the Minot Park Board election candidate forum. Before we get into questions, I'm going to start and discuss the ground rules a little bit here. And just to remind all of our audience, you can send questions in and we'll try to get as many as we can answered. So with that, I'm going to go over some of the ground rules. This week's forums, there's going to be 3. Tonight's the park board, tomorrow is the school board, and Thursday would be the city council. They're being conducted by the Government Affairs Committee of the Minot Area Chamber of Commerce for its members in the community. When you submit questions, we want it to be a question, not a jab at somebody or not an opinion. We want a question. We may not answer all the questions. We may not get to them all. We will go until 7:30, or if we're done before 7:30, we will end early. And before I start with introductions, I just want to quickly mention how to vote this year. Hopefully most of you know how to vote, and I'm a little behind the 8 ball myself. I got this letter from the Secretary of State's office, and what it is, it's an application to get a ballot. So the front describes what to do, and the back is an application that you need to fill out, which I have not done yet, and they want you to mail it as soon as possible, but it says before May 28th or sooner. After May 28th, they say in the letter, it would be best to hand deliver it to your county auditor or forward it by email or fax. Otherwise, you may not receive a ballot in time to vote. It says your ballot should arrive in 10 days. And you can contact your county auditor if you have questions or if you're having issues or if you didn't get one of these. So with that, I'm going to name all the candidates here, and we'll go one by one and start with self-introductions. So just the details on the election, we have 5 candidates here tonight, and there are 2 seats open for the park board, and these are 4-year terms on the park board. The election is June 9th, and so the incumbents on the park board here tonight are Cliff Hovda and Steve Wharton. And the challengers are Ken Kitzman, Jeff Risk, and Justin Hammer. So I'm gonna just start to my left tonight, and we'll start with Justin Hammer. Just introduce yourself. Tell us why you wanna run for the park board and why you would be a good fit on the park board.
I'm gonna test my mic here first. Can you tell if it's working or not? Yes. All right, perfect. So thanks for the introduction. Like I said, my name is Justin Hammer. I'm about an 18, 19-year Minot resident now. I'm a North Dakota boy. Grew up in Williston, North Dakota. Went to school at University of North Dakota. Actually pursued a degree in recreation and leisure services and worked in that industry for about 3 years before moving to Minot to pursue other interests. Married, have 2 kids. Both my kids are very active in all kinds of different activities. My stepson grew up playing hockey, and my daughter's a freshman in high school now, and she's involved in tennis and was involved in softball, and she's also a hockey player and has her license now, so my stress level's a little higher than normal with that. So I guess the reason I'm running for park board is the Parks and Recreation's been interest of mine ever since I was a kid, and it's the opportunity now. I am in a position in my personal life and my professional life that I have the time and energy to vote to it. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring. And the reason why I think I'd be a good candidate would, I have a lot of energy. I'm a hard worker, and when I decide to do something, I'm 100% in, and I get involved. And I guess that's the main reason I decided to do this, was I want to get involved and be a part of the process.
Thank you, Justin. We'll move on with Cliff Hovda.
Thank you, Tom. Almost a lifelong resident of mine at 51 years, and have been married that long as well. And 2 sons, both in Minneapolis, both in the medical field, one heavily involved as a one guy, physician in the COVID scare over there, the other dentist who's worked only 2 weeks out of the last 8 because of that. So it's like everybody else, there's a lot of things going on. 2 great daughter-in-laws. I have been a member of the park board for 3 terms, and it's been just really a very interesting, a very good place to be involved in a park, in a board in Minot. I enjoy it. It's a bit challenging, but it's, there's a lot of satisfaction in what the park district has done. There's a lot of pride in it. It's been a lot of things accomplished in the time I've been on there and before. In addition to that, we got a great staff and we got a director that's amazing. So it's just a good place to be. I'm on here because of all of that, and also because I'd like to continue working just to make the Minot Park District a better place. It's really good now, but to make it a better place, which I think is the direction we go. Obviously, there will be some different challenges at this point, but I think experience counts. I think that makes a difference. Was involved when we went through the flood, and if you were in that flood and dealt with it, you know a lot of how that came out. I think the Park District came out in the end better than it went into that. It took a lot of time, effort, and money, and some of that money was because the Park Board insured a lot of our buildings in the floodplain before that in the spring. That was a very good decision that gave us resources to recover. So I think there's good decision-making on the board, and I'd really like to be part of that again for one more term.
Thank you, Cliff. We'll go with Ken Kitzman now.
Light on or off?
I think your mic's off.
First of all, thank you for the chamber for allowing us all to be here today. In these times, it's kind of hard to knock on doors sometimes and do traditional campaigning, but we appreciate all of us, I'm sure, that given us this chance to introduce ourselves. I was born and raised in Minot. I'm proud of that. I remember I grew up on Valley Street and listened to the lions roar every night at feeding time. Unfortunately, I'm old enough that I remember when they moved the Sioux Line engine down to Roosevelt Park, and later on saved that train because the park board wanted to get rid of it at the time because it had asbestos. Did some work on that and we solved that. Graduated Minot High, Minot State. My wife, Judy, is also from Minot, graduated Minot State. 2 daughters, we're very fortunate, 4 grandchildren, and we all love the parks and recreation. We've been involved in all of those things. The reason that I wanted to run simply was that I wanted to be back involved in the community and doing something that we really appreciate and makes a difference to all of our citizens. It's a great place to live. The parks and recreation have always been great, and I want to ensure that it maintains that. We are in a difficult time, so for a short term, we're going to have to be a little bit flexible on how we manage and how we get participation in the community, but I think we can do that. It's just getting out of the box a little bit and making Minot the special place it is by doing some special little things. Again, I appreciate your opportunity, and we'll talk more on specific things. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Now it's time to move on to Jeff Risk.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Jeff Risk, and I grew up in a little town called Binford. And the best thing about Binford, Red Willow Lake was right there. Red Willow Lake had all the things I enjoyed. We had get-togethers around roller skating. We had lots of music. All the bands from the area came in, and sporting events. And so, as a kid, that was really, those things caught my interest a lot more than other things around. I came to Minot in 1975, I enrolled at Minot State, and I have degrees in physical education and in recreation. I spent a long career in teaching physical education, mainly at Nedros School, and then I started the athletic programs when we built a high school there. And I realized that through all the things I've done, that the quality of facilities that you build correlates directly to the participation, the enjoyment of the participants, and even spectators, that type of thing. I also officiated first around the country, and then the last, before I retired a few years ago, the last part of my career in officiating was probably in North Dakota and the 3 surrounding states. And that took me to pretty much every city that had a college or a university in it, and you see the facilities that are out there and what's available. And so those things, along with now that I'm, the only really duty I have since I retired, I work for the Mondac Conference. I'm the commissioner of that, which is the junior college league in 6 schools in North Dakota and 2 in Montana. And the process there has been to bring 8 schools that kind of viewed themselves as separate entities to try to view it as a league. When I was in baseball, the New York Yankees thought the only reason that teams existed was so they had other teams to play. They didn't realize how we all needed each other. And so when I look in Minot, I think this is a unique time. I've always had interest in these Parks and Rec area. And now that they've put the 2 entities together, I think there's a small window here before funds get distributed in different directions to maybe make a difference for our city.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll finish with introductions with Steve Wharton.
Well, good evening, and thanks again, as the rest has echoed, for letting us have this forum tonight. And I'm very thankful to be here. I'm presently, this is my first term on the park board, and I've probably had 40 years of experience in the private and public sector in the horticulture field. I hold 2 different degrees in horticulture and floriculture from a school in Texas and 1 in Colorado. So I've lived in Minot for well over 25 years. I'm married. I have a wife that just retired after 40 years of nursing at Trinity. And we have a daughter who this is her first year of teaching first grade in Killdeer. I'm presently employed with the Minot Public Schools at Magic City campus as the botany and horticulture instructor there full-time, and am overseeing that program. I also have been involved in many community and national areas, especially in my field. One of them, I served as national president, served on that board for over 10 years. I am the only certified grounds manager under their program in North Dakota. I'm a past member of the Sports Turf Managers Association, and I also served on the International Peace Garden board here locally. I also was a member at one time of the Sunrise Rotary Club, so I know a lot of young smiling at Carlos and John there too. So I've been very blessed and in my field and done a lot of things. I did spend well over 20 years with the Park District and was in the middle of the flood, just like Mr. Hubda said. Helped a lot on consulting with redoing the fields and the baseball fields in a lot of different areas. We had to rebuild the greenhouses and other things. So I was in the middle of all of that at the same time. I think we offer a really unique perspective here in Minot. I've been all over the United States and have friends all over the world in this field, and by far for what we get in Minot is a big bang for our buck when it comes to Parks and Rec. So I want to thanks again for allowing us to be here tonight.
Thank you, Steve. Now we'll get into specific questions, and I'll jump around so everyone gets a fair turn in the order of things. So I'm going to start with Mr. Kitzman. What does the park board do well, and what would you change or look to improve about the park board and the district and the facilities, I should say?
Well, one, I have a deep respect for both parks and recreation. The number of children that the rec programs do is amazing. And of course, the number of people that visit our parks is really outstanding. As this Kona-19 setback has happened, I think we've all been inside a lot. And yet, we've been out walking, Judy and I, and it's amazing how many trails we have. So I have a deep respect for the parks and recreation. I know the recreation right now is a little bit on the sidelines, but the parks are being used, and we need to do something to make sure that we can utilize to the maximum the facilities and opportunities that we have to ensure that our citizens have a quality of life. That's critical right now. The second part of your question was to,
What, if anything, would you look to change or improve about the park systems and rec system?
I think we need to keep, we have an amazing opportunity to make changes in the future because we have such a strong base to build on. I'm close with Ron and Ellie, and we meet often. I was with the foundation, and quite frankly, they just do an amazing job. And I think working with them is how this will get done. The
Okay.
changes, the good changes.
Thank you. Mr. Risk, now it's your turn.
I should give a shout out to my wife too. We've been married for 40 years. I kind of skipped around that last one. And when I came to Minot, I worked for Unky Hammond right when I got here, and then Keith White, who just passed away, did a lot of good things for our community. And then the last guy I worked for was Mike Elgie, who was my roommate at the time. So I did spend a lot of time with the recreation side of it. It was always confusing to me why Parks and Recs were separate. Every other place in the country. It always seemed like a push me, pull you thing, where you 1 step forward and 2 steps back, the old toy we used to have as a kid. But the things I really think they have done well, I think Ron has led things well, I believe, in our city. We have made several improvements. Corbett Field is improved. The softball fields up at North Hill or South Hill Complex. I thought the best thing we've done in Minot is the Pepsi rink. And when I walk in there, that looks like facilities that I go to. The only thing that I thought was lacking in there is a scoreboard and video boards, that type of thing. They didn't look like they fit the building, but I understand that that's in the works. And shout out to the Loki family for that. I think they've done very well. What I think could be improved in our city, I think we seem to always settle for average, in my opinion. We start to do projects and then we never quite finish them. Or we forget about the spectator side of it. And like the hockey arena, it always embarrassed me. I didn't have a lot to do with hockey, but it embarrassed me that people had to come to our town and sit on a metal bleacher to watch a hockey game. So that's why I really like the new arena. And other things, I would like to see quality of arenas, and that the arenas would fit our city. We're not Fargo, we're not Grand Forks, we're not Bismarck, but we have a slot. And to have quality buildings that fit the size of our community and things to do. And hopefully I can have a chance to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Wharton, do you want me to repeat the question?
Sure, go ahead.
what does the park board do well, and what would you change or look to improve?
Well, I think I kind of have a two-sided perspective of it now, having served as a commissioner and then also worked there as an employee, plus having done other things outside of just parks and recs. But I think the most important thing we did in the past few years was finally the merger of the park and rec. And I had the same question as Mr. That went on for years and years and years, it seems like, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. And I think it was a total win-win for the taxpayer and for the people of Minot. And so that merger has gone off very, very well. We were even able to reduce the mill levy that was being charged to the citizens when it was merged. So we don't have an overlapping of a lot of things going on. And I know they love it, and their programs have really are really starting to take off with that. So I think we do that well. We try to be very astute with our spending, and we know we have a very small piece of the pie. And so that's one thing that we have to be very, very conscious and do it. But I think we offer some of the best facilities for a city our size, really. And they keep improving. I mean, now look how the trail system started, and now we're going to be able to connect the whole town, north, south, east, and west. And so there's a lot of other things that I could list here that could go on and on with the different facilities that have been built and keep adding on to. But I think we do a lot of things really well. And at this point, I really don't see anything that I would back up on. I think we're just going to have to be very, very conscious to see how the community survives this pandemic economically and emotionally. And we'll probably, we may have to back off on some things, and we may have to accelerate on others.
Thank you. Mr. Hammer.
Well, I've been in Minot for a little over 18 years now, and, I think back to when I first moved here till now, and, I kind of echo some of the other candidates' comments on the facilities and the improvements that have been made. I look at, Corbett Field and the South Hill Softball Complex, excuse me, Mesa Arena, the zoo, some of those, Perkett, the outdoor hockey rink at Perkett, and the upcoming improvements at Polaris Park. So I've seen, I guess in my opinion, the Park District be aggressive on that aspect of making those improvements, and I'm sure the flood, was devastating and has had some impact on the ability to make some of those improvements or have to make some of those improvements. And, Mr. Risk mentions the Pepsi Arena, and the Pepsi Arena really is, you take out Ingolstadt Arena and the Shields Arena in Fargo, the Pepsi rink is the nicest rink in the state, and hopefully we can start driving some more activities to that facility. And, that kind of, as far as what can the Park District do to improve, that would be an area that I'd like to see us as partner with those organizations to bring in bigger events and have some economic impact into the community. And, on a side note too, or another aspect of improvement is just promoting themselves. I've lived here for 18 years, and there's still little hidden gems of Minot that I don't know about. And I've recently, since, deciding to run for the park board, I have snooped around on their website and tried, I find that as maybe an area of an improvement of just being able to promote themselves and give the citizens the tools to be able to find the parks and facilities that are available to them to be able to utilize and take advantage of. I live over by Arrowhead, and I'm a frequent user of Leech Park, and I wish my dog liked the dog park more than it does, but she doesn't like to go out there very often. But I've been riding my bike out there like recently, and you look at the golf course is nice and green, and I'm really excited to see the Wee Links golf course finish up and to see all those trails and things like that, because I have had the opportunity to travel a lot around the upper Midwest, and I spend a lot of time in Sioux Falls and Fargo, and Sioux Falls has some great.
I think I'm getting
Great
the
parks.
time nod from John.
All right. Well,
Okay.
sounds good. Thank you.
What was the, do we give him 2 minutes? I'm sorry, I didn't mention that.
About 2 minutes.
About 2 minutes. Okay. Mr. Hovda, you're next.
I've been asked to make sure you turn your mics on. Some people are having hard times, so when you're talking, make sure your mic is on, please.
Okay, I'll address what I think the Park District does well first. I think they do a lot of things well. I think the maintenance of what we have is a priority, and to take that, and that's what you have to do to move forward and to do more things. The management is excellent. You know, we've got lots of long-term employees that bring a lot to the district that were here in the flood and since then. That's good hiring on the part of the administration. That's important. I think I would maybe differ slightly on things not being quite where they could be, but it's true in part you can always do better and do more. It does generally take a budget to do that. I think the Park District has been excellent in building community relations, and having the community support is amazing. I mean, there's been tremendous support, including Mr. Kitzman's crew that really has supported the Park District. And I think you have to do a real good job to do that. So that's important. We need to continue to do that, because a lot of what we've done has only been able to be totally done and done well because of the community support. What could we do better? Perhaps some other small things. I mean, we could certainly use, if you want to talk specifics, another bike park in a part of town. Splash pads are impressively low cost but well used. That's good. We have a couple of priorities that we need to look at because of time constraints. One of them is the new land we have in Northwest Minot. We have a 5-year push on that coming up, that we need to at least start something out there. It does not need to be completed. So those kinds of things are going to be decisions the Park Board with input has to make. Another priority, since we've completed the cat, the tiger, and the lion exhibits, now the leopard one is really in need of a lot of change, but we have a kind of a limit on that, because there's a flood wall coming through there, and you have to have permits in place and so on. So those kinds of decisions and setting priorities are something we have to do, and we're going to have to do them better this time around and next year, because it is a challenging time. But I think this Park Board and this district is up to it.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. We'll start with Mr. Wharton this time. And I know a few of you have mentioned it already, and it's on all our minds, this COVID-19. What do you see happening with the Park District with this? If we have a lack of funding, I mean, what should we do about it, and what can we do about it? And just kind of give your thoughts on how this is going to affect the Park District.
Well, thanks for that question, because it's one that's been asked of me by several people. I think really there's a lot of unknowns still. North Dakota, and particularly Minot, has been spared somewhat of this pandemic, but it's certainly, as we come out of it, we hopefully we'll have a better idea of where we're at financially, what has been the toll on the population in general. Have we lost population? What's gone on because of it? In particular, where are we going to be at unemployment-wise, and especially our sales tax dollars and I'm sure state funding is going to be tight, extremely tight. So we may have to back off on some things that we have on our long-term plan and we are working on now. We may just have to slow those down a little bit and re-examine and reprioritize what we do. But we're very good at doing that. And I just think that first off, we got to take care of what we have, maintain our staff, and continue forward as the pandemic plays out.
Thank you. Mr. Hammer.
Nope. got to hold the button down a little bit longer. Sorry about that. The whole COVID-19 situation's obviously it's an ever-changing thing, and it's something that I personally have never been through any situation like this before. And it's, I see us starting to work our way out of it. Obviously, I think it's going to change the way people think about doing things in their everyday lives for the rest of their lives. It's going to, as far as the social distancing and putting their kids in recreation activities, I think there's going to be a lot of parents that are going to be thinking about, do I really want my child to be in that activity, taking this current situation we're in. So I think the Park District, really needs to take that into consideration and research and find out what kind of things can we do to adapt to that situation. Is there different recreation? Is there different activities that are better suited to be offered versus what have been being offered? And I see the parks as, I know that they've already did some sanitation a couple times to those, and those are things that are, is that something that's going to be a norm now for us to have to do? And obviously that all those things cost money, and that's, that has to be taken into consideration. So, it's I deal with it in my professional life too. I have I'm a part owner of a company. I have employees that are concerned about coming to work and concerned about, their families and things too. So I think that's something that especially in the recreation side of things, they have to consider maybe choosing different activities or offering different activities or modifying them. So.
Thank you. Mr. Hovda would be next.
Repeat the question again, please.
Yeah, in light of this COVID-19, what do you see happening going forward with the Park District, especially if we're lacking in funding? What kind of things do we need to do to work through this, and what do you see happening in the future?
Well, it's going to have an effect without question. We're going to see it in the attendance. We're going to see it in the money. We're going to see it in donations. We have to, as a park district, stay on top of it. We have to be aware of the income, the revenue. We're going to have to probably shift our priorities. There's going to perhaps be some cutbacks. For instance, it was brought up the other day, the last meeting, that perhaps there was even a motion on it that we spend $30,000 on concepts for some of the bare land we have, and just to get some look at some of the buildings. We looked at it. The majority said no, we're not going to do it. It's not a necessary item at this time. That's just one thing, but we need to look at everything specifically. I think it's going to be a shifting of priorities. Like Mr. Wharton said, it's also going to be time sensitive. Perhaps things that we were thinking about this year can be delayed a year. Like, I'll give you another example, the asphalt project and a lot of the roads and the asphalt in the park, a very big project. Before this started, we looked at the whole district and said, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, which in a sense it does, because if you delay some things, they cost more later. But perhaps you look at what absolutely needs to be done and delay something a year, have a different amount of money coming in. I think it's taking, what it's really going to take is a constant oversight of what we're doing, what we want to do, revenue and income and expenditures. I agree with Mr. Wharton, keeping people in place if you can is critical, but maintaining what we have is actually the bottom line of getting that done.
Thank you. Mr. Kitzman.
My personal belief is that the medical part of COVID-19 will slow.
I don't see your light on, Ken. There you go. It's on.
The medical part of COVID-19 will actually slow as the medical community addresses that. I think the longer-term challenge for Parks and Recreation is going to be quality of life still, but in a different way that we look at it. In other words, our walking paths, our ability to manage our facilities in such a way that people can get out safely and enjoy our community. Because, I mean, you can only stay housed in and buttoned down so long, and we have to find a creative way to do those things. And I believe there are ways to do those things, but I think it's critically important that we understand that one will slide down and the other will ramp up as we're trying to get out and address some of these things. The other part will be the economic damage that handles with jobs and loss of jobs or slowdown of businesses. Parks and Recreation, I think, needs to be a big, big part of creating that quality of life without the economic necessary to spend to do it. It needs to be creative. I think, again, I have all my belief that this organization can do that. They're very creative. They have great staff. I think it can be done.
Thank you. Mr. Risk, I don't see your light on right now, so there you go.
Okay, I think I've been backwards on that up to this point. One thing, I'm glad that the parks have been open in Minot. I think with anything, there's assumption of risk, and people, if they want, should be able to use things. And I would be a proponent of that if I was on this board. I do know there's going to be some growing pains. We're losing people in our city. We're losing a tax base. But I think it's just going to make partnerships that much more important. The last time I spoke in this room, Minot State, Minot High School, and several others were planning to have a stadium built at Minot State. And I thought, whoa, first time since I've been in Minot where several groups have gotten together. Usually it's one entity trying to get something pushed through, then another. And I was excited about that. And then it all kind of fell apart. And then we end up, which, back to my point, we end up with a place at Minot State without a track. We end up with a smaller than what we wanted stadium. And then Minot High School put some improvements into theirs. But we're two entities working separate. The Bismarck Bowl has been amazing for them. It elevated their soccer, their football, and other things in their community, and we had a chance to do that, and I thought we kind of let it slip through. So when Parks and Rec go together, and I think we can create partnerships in the city and try to bring people together and still move forward with some projects.
Thank you. All right, I think we'll move right into some public questions. Here's one. I think it was the first one we got, or one of the first. And we'll start with Mr. Hovda. What can be done to get the EPA to approve the disc golf course? It's been over 2 years. I'm assuming that's around the Mesa and the old landfill. Is that what they're referencing?
That is the old landfill. There's been a lot of effort already to do that, including working with Senator Hoven's office and our representatives. We've gotten really not far with those efforts. There's some mixed consensus on what to do at this point. One philosophy is to, we have some plans for that. We've laid out, for instance, a cross-country track that we now use at the golf course, disc golf, those kinds of things that are above ground, so to speak, where you don't disturb the ground. They would meet the EPA guidelines if the EPA would give permission, and they have not done that. There's no reason not to do it at this point. So the two conflicting concepts on what to do at this time are to keep pursuing power, help, from our representatives, our governor, and do that. And the other one is build it and get permission. That's a risky business, but if you do some of that work, you are doing it in conjunction with the exact regulations. But I think that's where we're at, because it's been several members of the board, and everybody involved has been working on trying to get that in place. And it's a federal agency that's not been very cooperative. So we don't have a great solution to it other than continue to do what we've done, and then the more radical approach perhaps.
Thank you. Mr. Kitzman?
Well, Cliff, I'm not correcting you, but it's been way more than 2 years.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, this has been going on for decades, and they lost the paperwork, and they did this, and they do, and I have to, again, I'm going to say Ron and Ellie and the crew, they're doing everything they can, but it's not their issue. I agree with Cliff. I think it's just time. We'll follow the rules about disturbing the dirt, all the things you can and can't do, but there's no reason why you can't have a biking pass out there for BMX bikes and that kind of things. There's no reason that you can't cross the land to have a sledding hill and all of the other things that are on the plan. I think it's time to move forward and ask for forgiveness. That sounds a bit strange, but they just don't move. And it's just inappropriate. It's not the right thing.
Sure. Thank you. Mr. Risk?
I'm all for moving forward on anything that fits in a budget. I get frustrated. They had the Garrison Diversion Project started when I was a kid. I don't think they ever finished it. NAS is going to fall in that category, and I'm not so sure flood protection isn't going to fall in that category also. So I think there's some point you just need to move forward. The other option there would be at Polaris Park, they do have a disc golf course, but it's really all it is the cups. There really isn't much else there. There should be pads, there should be other things. What happens, it gets worn down, and then it rains and you got a big mud puddle in your area. So and that's my whole thing on the projects need to be from start to finish. And then people will enjoy them more and they will participate more.
Thank you. Mr. Wharton?
Well, I have shared this frustration the same as Ken and Cliff have. When I first moved here over 25 years ago, this was a discussion that area, would someday belong to the Park District and we could move forward on it. And I know Alan Walter tried to for many years. The Park Board is really has pushed and pushed and pushed on our federal authorities to get this done. And EPA is our holdup, as they are with anything else. There's no reason whatsoever that the project cannot move forward. We have put it on a timetable. We have the finances available to do it. We would not violate any policies that they require as far as digging into the ground or any of those kind of things. It's an ideal area for all these things that the other gentlemen have talked about and the public has brought to our attention. And so right now, it's kind of we're being held hostage. And if it comes to push comes to shove, like some of the others have said, I'm not quite sure which way I would go. But on the other hand, it's been long enough. It's time to move forward with that project.
Thank you. The next question comes from somebody. They seem to like Bismarck Mandan's. Did I miss? Oh, I'm sorry, Justin. Sorry.
That's okay. It's actually the issue is something I don't have a lot of knowledge on as far as the discourse there and the EPA, the dealings with them. But I would say, I kind of live by a model: the squeaky wheel gets the grease. We have Senator Hoven's a Minot boy. I think it just got to keep pushing, and I'm sure the Park Board has been doing that. I don't have any reason not to believe that, but that is a nice area, the whole Mesa Arena area, the golf course across the road. So something needs to happen there, and like I said, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So I would just keep on pushing and pushing until something happens.
Thank you. All right, now to the next question. This writer, they seem to like the softball facilities better in Bismarck and Mandan, and they want to know what can be done to improve, or do you agree with making some improvements to get more softball tournaments into Minot? I guess that's the crux of their question. Are you in favor of improving the softball facilities, and how can we get more large tournaments into Minot? And we'll start with Mr. Risk this time.
Well, I'm all for improving things. And a big reason the fields in Bismarck are more enjoyable is they're not on the top of a hill. In Minot, we seem to build everything open to the northwest and up on high ground. Now, some of that is land that was available, I get that. And those are there, and we deal with it. Things have grown around South Hill a little more. That's turned into a better place. North Hill is just, it is too open. And I talked with Rick Hedberg about this when they were building the stadium at Minot State. I said, you need to put a big freeway wall up on the northwest side to make that place more enjoyable. And I know you can plant shrubbery and do things, and it takes an awful long time to grow, especially when the wind blows. But I think there are ways that you could improve that. The bottom line is softball is, at one time had, I think, about 200 teams in Minot. Way back, I think the number is much smaller than that now, and it may correlate with facilities, but I think it's somewhat to do with the interest of softball.
Thank you. Mr. Wharton.
Well, we do, softball has been a discussion for some time with a lot of people. Unfortunately, South Hill has gotten boxed in, so there's really no room for them to grow. However, they've made some very good improvements over the past couple of years. We do have artificial turf out there. There's a field for the dream catchers. There are some other things. However, they're really not much more that we can do. North Hill, I agree, would be a hard place to do that. I think further down the road, you're going to have to, if softball does pick up and our teams are numbers show up and we become a city that is a destination city for a softball type circuit tournament, we would probably need to build some type of complex where that could happen and have plenty of room around it for parking and expansion if need be. But I think with the merger now, we'll be able to see that we can do a lot more with both, as much as we can with both sets of fields, and make them a lot more enjoyable, because I've heard these same things that have been brought up by some of the other gentlemen here. So,
Thank you. Mr. Hammer.
Well, it's been a few years since I played softball, and one of the reasons I quit playing softball was I was sick of getting in my car driving to Dickinson and Bismarck to play in tournaments every weekend. And part of the problem was the guys I played with want to do those things, but I think we need to look at something to do to bring those kind of things to Minot, not only softball tournaments, but everything. And Mr. Warden's correct. The South Hill complex is a great facility with the turf now. My daughter played fast pitch softball for a few years, and that the season they put that in, they probably started, 2-3 weeks before they would have been able to if it had been a regular field. So that has the impact on our kids here being able to start things sooner too. And the softball complexes, if maybe we do need to look at a different facility somewhere else. But I think with the Parks and Recreation being together now, they can work as in tandem of trying to increase the participation numbers and start planning tournaments, and that we need to get the community behind us, and that's the economic impact of things. Start bringing those people here to stay in hotels here versus us going to Bismarck and Dickinson and spending nights in hotels there. So,
Thank you. Mr. Hovda.
I think I would agree with everything that's said on softball here. We need another South Hill complex, really. Building one field isn't going to do it. Just as an example, we can do more. We have offered to work with the city on the use and renovation of the old Ramsted middle school project, which would give us a couple of things. It would improve that neighborhood tremendously. It'd give us more recreation facilities. We've approached the school, gone to the meetings and talked to them about it. That hasn't materialized yet to this point. Not saying that that could be entirely a softball complex, but that could be included somewhat. I'm imagining if you play softball and you want to do tournaments like they do the McQuaid and Bismarck, you want a lot of fields in a congregated area. And certainly out of the wind is possible. That's a little challenging in North Dakota, but the lower you can get, you can. But then you also look at, am I getting into the floodplain? And you have to take that into consideration. If something gets built in a floodplain, it can sometimes be built, but it has to be something that can be dismantled and rebuilt. And a softball complex might be fitting that. But you got some parameters you got to stay within. But I would certainly support additional football or softball in the city.
Thank you. Mr. Kitzman.
It's great being last. There's no question that the softball is an economic engine that we should try to capture as much as we can. It's good for the city. That being said, there right now are so many wish lists going on that where do you invest those funds? I mean, you will have the softball folks and they want to do this, and you want skaters, they want doing this, and the more ice, and so on and so on and so on. So it really gets down to a matter of priorities of what's important and what can have the largest payback, and more importantly, quality of life. I hate to say this, we're getting by. I think they can be improved. I think you can do something on North Hill to get those trees growing and more growing. But the fact is the Park Board and Recreation District, they get pulled in many different directions, and you will never make everybody happy. At the same time, I actually think they do an excellent job. And I think that it's getting better all the time with the combination. I think them working together will create better outcomes. So, I mean, we're all kind of in the same boat here saying that there's not a pot of gold that we can shoot over here without taking it away from over here. So, yes, I would love to do all of those things.
Yeah, that's kind of the theme here. We've got everyone has their sport or what they like, and it's like, how do we make this better? And so there is quite a balance. With that, I have two questions on one of those topics. And these are people asking about an aquatic center. Are there any plans right now? And, how would you go about getting an aquatic center, or should we get an aquatic center? What are your thoughts? And we'll start with the rotation back to Mr. Hammer again.
Well, that is a definite need the city of Minot is in need of, is an aquatic center. And, I've been to Williston, I've been to Dickinson, I've been to Watford City, and you see the facilities they have, and the impact they're having on their communities is outstanding. And when I was soliciting signatures for my petition, which was probably one of the hardest things I've did for a long time, of getting everybody's opinion on what the Park District needs to do, I probably had more questions on an aquatic center, of why don't we have an aquatic center? Why do I have, I'm going to Mandan this weekend with my daughter she's at a swim meet. And last weekend I was in Williston for a swim meet. Why can't we get something in Minot, a better facility in Minot to attract more people? And Mr. Kitzman said, well, the softball, we'd be nice to have a pot of gold we could do everything with, but I think an aquatic center is something that needs to be looked at very hard to bring that quality of life to our community, as well as the economic impact it could have on us.
Thank you, Mr. Hubda. Your mic. There you go.
I don't think there's any doubt that there's a lot of interest and desire to have a top-notch aquatic center. I mean, you look at the Minot High pool, when was that built, in the 70s? We don't have a modern facility at this time, and there's a lot of need. The Park District is, in conjunction with the land next to Mesa, looking at and talking with the swimming people and the different entities in town to a certain degree, just starting to research that possibility. It's a lot of money. It is, millions. And there's even one entity in Minot that has said, if we were given a brand-new pool, we couldn't afford to run it. And it's probably a little bit more feasible running it off a hockey facility when you look at that. There's no question we need it, but I don't see it happening in the near future, particularly with the constraints that all of us are under with the COVID-19. It's a challenge, because if you were to take and invest and buy that, it's going to take a huge gap out of any other facilities or even maintenance or whatever you might look at. Huge. I mean, it's probably, the estimates I've heard are more than the yearly budget of the Park District. So what it would take would be a huge community effort. The Park District, the school district, possibly even the county and some type of, other funding, the swimming people to a huge extent, which sometimes, for instance, in hockey, they've had great contributions. But I think it could be used and needed. I don't see it happening very soon.
Thank you. Mr. Kidsman?
I believe that we need the water, but Cliff is exactly right. This is a building and an operation that is very, very expensive. If the taxpayers and the citizens of Minot want to use this and make it a critical part of our quality of life, then it's important that they support it, because it will never fund itself. Unlike hockey that kind of covers itself, and the zoo and all of those other opportunities that we give through Parks and Rec, this will never be a moneymaker. That being said, now the children we're close to having that pool go down. I mean, it's very old, it's outdated, like he mentioned. At some point, we're going to have to address this issue. And there's no magic wand on this time. It's going to be a cost to the taxpayers if they wish to do that. And I cannot see at some point not having swimming and water availability, the warm water pool for those that
Were
need
you
it.
talking about Roosevelt Park?
No, the Mesa.
Oh, the
Mesa,
oh,
yeah.
Magic
Magic
you
City,
meant.
yes.
Oh, okay.
The Magic City, our present competition pool is on its last leg almost. And the voters are going to have to decide. It's something that, he's right, it's out there, but it's not going away. This is an issue that our community is going to have to answer if we're going to be a Class A community.
Thank you. Mr. Risk?
Aquatics is expensive, but many people shy away from it. You look at how they did it in Fargo. Fargo has it tied in with an elementary school. They have a beautiful pool. I know they got some help from, might have been the Olympic Committee or something, but they have a very nice facility. Bismarck, it's on the campus of Bismarck State. Maintenance is the key with aquatics facilities. And how are you going to do it? I know the Pepsi rink, I believe the hockey boosters pay half the maintenance. That is the type of plan that would have to go forward. And I keep coming back to partnerships. If you're going to try to do it on your own, there's no way. But there is money in our city. It's just getting the people to buy in to something that we would like to do. And I think looking at mainly just aquatics. The trend seems to be to try to go to multi-sport facilities, multi-use in there, and so you don't have to build everything from the ground up. But I think with some time and energy and some good planning, that it would be possible.
Thank you. Mr. Wharton?
Yes, this has been a discussion for some time with the board, even before my tenure. I remember even when my child was in high school and middle school, it was a discussion then. We are taking some very positive steps so forward with that because with our community forums, this was a big discussion. Number one, we have Mr. Commissioner Smith meeting with the people who would like to have a pool and telling him, hey, this is how Mesa was done. You know, how many years it took to get that basket of money started and build from there. And the Mesa groups have been phenomenal in donating and providing money for that facility. So that's the same type of thing that's going to have to work for that. We do have a conceptual drawing on how that would work on the land next to Mesa, and that would be tied into a rec type center. We could be innovative in heating the water of the pool by taking the hot air that's blown out for making ice and using that to heat the pool, which would save money. Again, like Mr. Hovda said, you're looking at 2 or 3 times the park district's budget in 1 year to build that facility. So we've got to come together as partners like Mesa did, soccer has, and all of these other groups we work with, the zoo crew, you name it. They're what they are because we worked together with them.
Thank you. All right, next sport, we'll talk about golf. What do you see the future of the Souris River Golf Course, and you know, what should or could happen with possibly a new course? And we start with Ken this time around.
The least experienced person in this room in his golf is me. That being said, Steve Kotzik and I are really good friends, actually, and we've talked about this quite a bit. The Souris, if it's flooded again, it won't be fixed. I mean, it will go away or just about go away. That's my understanding. They have a plan up by the road going out to Burlington and up on the hill, up in northwest Minot. I think we still need to start preparing for that, though. The day will come when that has to happen, and I guess I don't have the privy of the dates and time, but it's going to happen at some point, and we should be planning for that and laying it out and getting support. Start the background work so it can be completed when it's needed, and that background work actually needs to be started right now because we don't know when the mighty mouse will roar again, quite frankly. And at that point, then, it has to be ready to go and be done. In fact, I believe it's already started, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Risk.
Yeah, I know there are issues with Souris. My look at it is we have several dams on the river, and that negotiation with the people upstream, I think, will prevent a lot of issues in that regard. But you also have to have a plan B and everything. I was a teacher, and if your technology went down or whatever, you had to have something to go to. And planning, or at least the foresight of getting the next course on the way would be good. I think there's also some opportunity between the Varden and the new country club. I don't know how well they're both doing, and there may be some room for negotiation there.
Thank you, Mr. Wharton.
Yes, we saw after the flood that we were going to have to do something with Souris. When Souris was built, it was built to be a holding pond if the river ever overflowed, and every we've had continual water problems out there for several years. I have played golf off and on my life, so, I'm not as probably dyed in the wool as Mr. Hovda is, but I do understand it's an important part of our programs. But we have made great steps on where can we build a new course. And that's part of that master plan with the Northwest Park area that we are working on now. There will be an on-the-shelf plan for a new course completed here very shortly. That we have a lot of permitting things and other things we have to go through, but that is part of that whole area, as well as family areas and everything else. So eventually, I think Cirrus, as beautiful as it is and as great a course as it is, will eventually go away or become a much smaller course, perhaps 9 holes or whatever on the top of the hills, and go from there. But there again, there's, pulling at all these different organizations. Golf people too have also been very fantastic in helping to support that organization and so forth. So,
Thank you. Mr. Hammer?
Well, this Cirrus Golf Course is a fantastic facility, and, I guess I'm kind of torn a little bit between moving it and keeping it, but, I would have to agree that it's one of those facilities, just like any other facility the Park District has, if it's in danger of being damaged or being out of commission, a Plan B does need to be in place, and maybe, a Plan B needs to be put into place to work down the road to come to fruition. But I frequently use the bike path right there, and it's just last night I was out there and the grass is green. It's the nicest looking golf course in the city of Minot right now. I'm a member at the Varden. I golf at the Varden every week. Me and Ken could probably battle out for who could be the better golfer, because I'm not a good golfer by any means. But I guess I'm torn, because that's such a nice area out there with the dog park and the biking path, and you got the woodland trail out there, and and I'm sure there's other uses for that area, but I do think it's an area that we need to have a Plan B in place. Is for being a public course, being a Park District Grand course, it's probably one of the top 2 courses in the state as far as a Park District Grand course. So I'd hate to see it leave, but I do think you have to have a plan in place.
Thank you. Mr. Hovda, you're next.
There is a Plan B in place. Cirrus has 2 issues. It has the flood issue we had in 2011. It also has an erosion issue. It used to start flooding at about 3,000 cubic feet. Now with the buildup in the Cirrus River, it starts flooding at 2,500 cubic feet. And that's getting more dramatic, where we start to lose a green or a part of a fairway and so on. So you've got 2. Plus, we've got erosion issues. You saw in number 8 where the Park District spent $400,000 shoring that up. We have numerous spots like that out there. We spent, I believe, about $2 million to renovate it after the flood, and junior golf gave a significant portion of that. But my philosophy is we use Cirrus as long as possible, as long as it's good. And it's a marvelous municipal course. So that's Plan A, I believe. You keep going with it. When it does flood, depending on the extent, you may be able to save 9 holes out there and retain a 9-hole or a 6-hole or a beautiful practice area. That's part of it. The land we acquired from the state, 240 acres in northwest Minot, the majority of that land is for a family recreation area. Lots of different kinds of things thought about and planned. The golf course portion of that, because of the danger to Cirrus, is over 95% completely planned. And in the process of completing what Mr. Wharton said, the engineering, the water permits, and all of those things. So that is, if we got flooded this summer, and if the board made the decision, okay, we're not going to put another $2 million into this or more, we're going to build a new golf course, that could start later this year. And it takes about 2 summers to do it. So that's as fast as you could be ready to do it. We're ready to do it. I don't think we need to do it, but that's part of what this board in this district, I think, does well, is that kind of planning. That's part of our 5-year plan that we're in the first year of right now.
Thank you. All right, we have another question from the audience. And this one might be pretty fitting now with the virus and potential funding problems we could have in the future. And correct me if this is wrong, but the audience member states that 20% of our taxes go to the park district. How can you help with lowering taxes? What cuts can you make? And we'll start with Mr. Wharton.
Well, I'm not so sure about the percentage of that. I will take the viewer's word for that. But we are a smaller piece of the pie, and we have to cover the whole city, and everything we have is expensive to run. No doubt about it. So we have to scrutinize that very carefully, and we've been very good at the last years of staying at a zero based increase in our mill levy in order to keep the taxes down. We knew that there were demands from the city and other things that were going to raise taxes, and so we thought it was very important that myself, I'm a fiscal conservative. I want to look at the best ways to do things and to do them right. So I think a lot of that just comes down to just being smart with our funds and moving forward with them best we can.
Thank you.
We thought it was very important that
Carla. Just kidding. It's okay. Mr. Hammer.
Well, no one likes to pay more taxes, so it's, I think that's always going to be an issue, and this whole COVID thing, the impact it's going to have on everybody in the municipalities is kind of unforeseen yet or unknown yet. I think that's with any business in mind. It's kind of the question of the unknown. I think, in my opinion, when the times get tough, you need to tighten your belt up. You need to build efficiencies, and that probably needs to start right now with building efficiencies around them. Merging the Parks and Recreation departments together was probably that's first step of building an efficiency, and just looking at what things we can do to lower costs or keep costs minimized. That's kind of go back to the Service Valley Golf Course. I was thinking about that actually last night when I was going down the path of just the efficiencies of having the wheel links across the river and the golf course there and the parks. What kind of efficiencies could be built there to help minimize some costs or lower costs. But like I said, no one likes to pay more taxes, so I think that's going to every year. It's never going to be an issue that goes away. But I think building efficiencies is the key.
Thank you. Mr. Hovda.
All right, a good question. I'm not sure that 20% number, I think it might be a little high, but certainly we do collect taxes. Another tax number that might be interesting for you to think about is that because of the tremendous support we've had from community and organizations and corporations and individuals, I think taxes of our whole budget make up 65% of what we spend. So, user fees and donations and all of that tremendously help and allow us to do a lot more. Yes, we are going to have to look carefully at this. Just for one example, the pool, if we're not able to open the pool, I think the pool costs us roughly $230,000 to operate. I think we take in something like $65,000. So in that sense, we're not losing as much money. If the zoo doesn't get a lot of people, Service doesn't get a lot of people, we're going to be down. Same with Mesa. So each entity is a little bit different. Service on a good year breaks about even because it's paid for. The zoo does not. The zoo in Mesa, the zoo is a very, very expensive proposition. So, yeah, we need to look at those things. What do? I think we do like we did with that $30,000 idea we had. We don't do it. I think we look at $1 million bonding possible for asphalt and decide, can we do significantly less for a couple of years? We have to look at the revenue constantly and the expenses constantly and make adjustments. I would really like to keep the people. I don't foresee that changing. We need them in most positions are absolutely critical. You can't run the zoo, the golf course, a lot of the projects without them, and we got good people. You don't want to lay them off and have to try to get them back. You might lose them. But we, again, have to look at everything carefully. We don't need to be, we can't afford to be a burden to the citizens of Minot during these times.
Thank you. Mr. Kitzman?
I agree, actually, with Ms. Hovde. This is no difference in how we run our family finances. If you can't afford it, then you have to make cuts or drawbacks or whatever it takes to get through. And when I opened my address when we started this was the medical part of COVID-19 is one thing. The economic factor is yet to come, and I think we're going to see that. I don't think it's going to be like a deep depression, but we're going to see shrinkage in our community. I believe that, which will lead to fewer taxes, and we really, really need to think out of the box now. How do we deliver a better product at a lower cost that the citizens want, and prioritize those things that need to be in our community for quality of life? That really is the critical answer, I think, right now, and question, actually, too, at the same time.
Thank you. Mr. Risk?
I think Mr. Kitzman gave a good answer. On that, it's a lot compared to how we live our lives. I do question the number a little bit on the percentage, and the recreation portion of that was under the city in previous years, so that number seems maybe a little skewed to people, but you were paying it just on a different line. As far as me on the outside, I would have to get the budget and study it a little more and see where we could make cutbacks. There's undoubtedly going to be some pains to bear, and it's probably not, if you're a political guy, this is not a good time to run for the park board. There's 2 incumbents, and we're going to end up with less money. So, but be that as it may, I think there's great opportunity in the fact that Parks and Rec are together. And if you if we go another 4 or 8 years, the money's going to be spoken for, and our community is going to have just what we have. And I'd like to be a part of making decisions to move us forward.
All right, I think we have time for one more question. We have about maybe 11, 12 minutes left, so we'll do one more question. And I'm going to end on a positive note here. What is the most exciting, positive thing ahead of the Park District and for the citizens of Minot, specifically with the Park District? And how do we get people more excited to use our facilities and find new things, maybe free things for them to do? And we'll start with Cliff.
One thing we're already doing that's really good.
Yep.
One of the things we're already doing that's really good is within the recreation department and a lot of our activities, we call it a scholarship, but if you can't afford it, you sign your name and it's taken care of and you can participate for free. That's amazing to me. Nobody is turned away. I think participation and access are so critical. And so that's amazing. And we need to continue to do that, maybe even expand it. I think in terms of projects, that leopard exhibit is an amazing one that would really be good. I mean, that finishes a huge improvement in that zoo. That zoo is the best zoo, in my opinion, between Minneapolis and Seattle. and it's even better now. So that project, you got the old sore spot, if you could somehow manage that. Again, like I said earlier, it's going to take a community effort. We've raised some money for it, we don't have it all. But that's also amazing. Some of the work we might be able to do, we can't do it all. We won't build that golf course at this point unless we're massively flooded. But that family recreation area sometime in the next few years is going to be outdoor recreation, it's going to be winter recreation, it's going to be family recreation. It's going to be a gem for this part of the state. So those two things, if you're looking at things, those are exciting, really neat things. And, that's part of why I'm hoping to be involved in this in the future. Because in spite of COVID, we're going to be able to do some things and keep on improving and keeping the quality of life going.
Thank you. Mr. Kitzman? I'm ending on a positive note. What's the most exciting thing you see for the future of the park system? And I'm kind of combining an audience question here too. What things can we do to get other people excited, get them into the facilities, and even maybe find some free activities they can do?
Okay, I kind of started with this saying that we have the best recreation and park district in the state of North Dakota. I honestly believe that. I know there's going to be challenges. I understand the distancing and the core and all those other issues, but all those other communities have that too. But we're the Magic City. We can do this. I come from the Minot Area Community Foundation. That's my background for the last 20 years. Well over $1 million in multiple projects within the parks. We always thought that was the best investments we could be for quality of life. And I still believe that. And there are organizations and there are corporate partners and there are other people out there that believe in our community just as much as I do or the rest of the folks here today. This is our community. We believe in it and we can make this happen. Will it take work? Absolutely. It won't be easy. But it's a matter of setting priorities and then doing them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Risk?
I think number one, you have to have a vision. And I think there's a lot possible in our city. It's just we have to do it in a smart way, and we need to do it with facilities that fit our town, size and everything. And I would like to see the quality issue be the focal point of that. My background is in officiating, and when you talk officiating, the only way to get better is you don't pat yourself on the back. You talk about things that didn't go quite the way you wanted them to, and where can we improve? And so I find that speaking the truth is a little more, you get a rub maybe right away, but once people sit back and think about it, it's a much easier way to go forward than say how nice everything is that we have. So I think that with the right approach, that multi-sport type thing would be a possibility. And or we do need, I believe, a lot of cities have green space. We do not have a designated green space in our city. It would be nice in the winters to have that type of thing. But I would just like to be a part of trying to move some things forward. And the reason I ran right now is because obviously the two Parks and Rec went together, but the current people were elected as Park Board members. Now we have Parks and Recreation together, and I think it takes a little different type of person to fit that bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wharton?
Well, I've seen a lot of excitement build and so forth over the years in my time in Minot. I think we see a lot of positive things that have happened. No one would ever thought we would have a facility like Mesa, like it's been mentioned by one of the other candidates. You know, you throw shields out, and I don't know, sometimes I'm not even wild about shields, but I think we have, you know, one of the best facilities, and we've used it for multiple purposes. This winter, when part of our rink went down, we were able to use that thing, and it was busy all the time. So I think we're constantly looking forward. That's one thing that makes it very exciting. The other thing is we never know when that nice surprise comes along, and Mr. Kitzman made that point that yes, they were responsible for a lot of money that came into the district, and we've had so many other individuals and groups that do that, and without them, we couldn't do it. And and I encourage those that want the pool and want the other things done, let's get it done, because it can be done. We'll overcome this thing. Life may be different. We may have to do things a little different. We may not be able to have it as, you know, people as close together and the buildings as big and so forth, but that doesn't mean that it's going to be bad. And like I said, when I opened up in my comments, I would have never came to Minot if I didn't think there was the potential to be here. And it did turn out to be one of the best park districts, and it is, for a city our size in the country. And I've probably seen thousands of them over the years.
Thank you. Mr. Hammer?
Well, thanks for saving the best for last. I appreciate that. You know, you bring up what's exciting and things of that nature. And, you know, I look at, you know, excuse me, Mr. Hove does mention the zoo, and I haven't traveled to a lot of zoos, but the zoos I have traveled to are nothing like the Minot Zoo. You know, I think that's a hidden gem in the city of Minot that I frequent maybe, you know, at least 4 or 5 times a year. Along with, you know, I'm also excited about to see the bike path expansion, seeing those things take place, the improvements up at Polaris Park. You know, I really like, that's going to be another neat project to see. You know, I grew up at the outdoor hockey rink as a kid, and that's an experience that it's hard to replace. You know, and how do we do that? You know, I think partnering with the groups. You know, I would question if Mesa Arena would be standing there if it wasn't for, you know, the Minot Hockey Boosters and the high school and, you know, those users that use that facility wouldn't make it. And, you know, and I'm one of those users. I still live in the dream playing hockey, playing senior hockey, and it's a great facility to have, and I'm proud of it. And I think, but partnering with more groups, and we've talked about aquatic centers. You know, the swimming groups need to come forward and partner with those. And softball, those groups we need to partner with those groups and partner with more groups. You know, the Oak Park movie nights are something that is a great activity to have, and we need to have more of those things. And hopefully with, you know, like I mentioned earlier, with the COVID-19, our recreation activities are probably going to have to change a little bit and how we do them, but they're still doable. You know, we're having this forum tonight. We're still doing that thing, you know, so it's doable. I think it takes thinking outside the box and getting people involved.
Thank you. We got a couple minutes. I just want to thank all the candidates for spending your time coming out tonight. I want to thank the chamber staff, Carla and John, and everybody else at the chamber board for supporting these events, and the city of Minot for letting us use this room tonight. And lastly, I just want to thank you all for tuning in. And just remember, tomorrow night at the same time, 6 p.m., same channels and everything, we're going to have the school board forum. So make sure to tune into that. And then Thursday night, same time, will be the city council forum. So just mark those. And with that, everybody have a good evening, and thank you.